Welcome, everyone, to Real Estate on the Up, the podcast that takes you behind the scenes of the real estate world in Orlando. I'm your host, Kyle Madorin, and on this show, we're all about pulling back the curtain with the unfiltered truth about real estate. We're not just here to sell houses. We're here to provide concierge-style service because everyone loves being treated like a VIP. This podcast is your go-to resource for transparency, integrity, and the knowledge you need to make smarter real estate decisions. Whether you're a seasoned investor or a first-time homebuyer, we've got you covered. So buckle up and get ready to move up in the world of real estate. It's time for Real Estate on the Up. Welcome to Real Estate on the Up, the podcast where we dive into the dynamic world of real estate, exploring trends, expert insights, and inspirational stories. I'm your host, Kyle Madorin, and today we have a truly remarkable guest with us. David Fraser, a realtor at Keller Williams Advantage III, has been the driving force in the Orlando real estate market for an impressive 32 years. Not only is David an Orlando native, but he's also a proud alum of the University of Central Florida, holding a degree in the business management from their prestigious College of Business Administration. David's extensive experience is marked by his strong negotiation skills and expertise in luxury homes and definitely waterfront properties. What makes David's journey even more inspiring is his personal story as a transplant recipient, showing resilience and strength both in his personal life and in his professional career. Join us today as we delve into David's unique perspective on the Orlando real estate market, his insights on negotiation strategies, and the factors that have fueled his success over the decades. You won't want to miss this episode of Real Estate on the Up. So without further ado, let's welcome David Fraser to the show. David, it's a pleasure to have you here.
Good to see you, Kyle.
All right. Thanks for joining us. So first off, you have had an amazing career, and I would like to go back to the beginning. So envision yourself as a fresh graduate right out of UCF and the path that lay in front of you. How did you decide to get into real estate?
Well, that sounds good. It was a pathway just from UCF into real estate, but it didn't quite happen that way. When I was at UCF, I was also a bartender at a huge nightclub in downtown Orlando. It was called Church Street Station, and I was the lead bartender at a club called, or bar called Rosie O'Grady's, which at the time was the fourth busiest tourist attraction in the state of Florida. So
people have fond memories of Church Street back then, yeah.
A lot of good times. You know, all my kids' godparents are friends from Church Street. It was an amazing time, but I was working at Church Street to put myself through college, and then the plan was to quit. But as a 25-year-old or so, 23-year-old, making as much money as I was making in the bar business, I kept on going, and I kind of put the degree to the side. And my move to real estate happened pretty quickly. A light bulb went off in my head. And it's kind of funny, but the light bulb was like, you didn't get your degree to sleep till noon and watch Andy Griffith every day. So when you're in the bar business, if you've ever been in the bar business, that it's kind of a perpetual cycle. And I was in that cycle, so I needed to find something that I could do. So I found a career that I could be my own boss. And there's good and bad in being your own boss, and we could talk about that. But I started in the real estate business to get out of the hospitality industry. So.
Got it. And so you're right. I have a lot of friends who came out of hospitality and the restaurant and bar world. And yeah, I mean, you can make really good money if you're good at what you do and you work in a popular spot. So I understand breaking that cycle, like you said, is really difficult because you have cash in hand. You know, you're having fun while you're working. You have a great group of people around you. And so it's hard to sometimes take that leap. So when you saw the opportunity then in real estate, besides being your own boss, was there someone who kind of guided you and persuaded you that you should take that step?
Well, besides my mom, who's sick of me being in the bar business, she introduced me to a lady named Susan Edwards, who worked for a small company called Higgins and Heath Better Homes and Gardens. Susan was one of my mother's clients. My mother was a vice president at Morgan Stanley, and Susan, one of her clients, who was a high producing agent back in the early 90s. And Susan kind of took me under her wing and mentored me and showed me how to break into the business. So that was my first steps into the real estate world.
So starting out, obviously a lot's changed, and we're going to talk about some of the changes in the industry since then. But tell us a little bit about your journey and some, like your first customers working in real estate. I know that's always an interesting thing for people to hear about. Like when you were starting out, what was it like as a new agent back in that era? Because so many things have changed since then.
Well, the market and how we do business is it's crazy how it has changed. When I first started in the business, pretty much you were given the training you were given was a phone book and your phone, and good luck. We wish you the best. Start making calls. And we did that. And the thing that I look back that, the one item, and I can't find that, in a book that would represent it. But if you think about a phone book, think about you know what an MLS book is, Kyle?
It looks like a giant phone book. Yeah.
That's how we looked at listings. It was a giant phone book. So anybody that's listening that doesn't have a clue what a phone book is, Google phone book, and it's about this thick. And that would get printed every other week. They would print out the listings. And if, let's say you were looking at a property in Southeast Orlando, you would flip to the section in Southeast Orlando and see what properties were available. And then you would call the agent. Is this property available? And what about this property? Then you had to keep on calling agents. And if they said, no, it's sold, you have to draw an X through it. Then you call the next property. And the other thing that was crazy back then is now we just switched last week to a new lockbox system here in Orlando, which
Yep.
everybody's kind of yipping about. Back in the day, I hate saying that. Back when I was starting to show a property, you had to drive to the list agent's office, pick up a key from their office and sign it out, then go show the property and get done and drive back to their office and drop the key off. That's how we
That's
worked our
crazy.
business back then. So it was the stuff we see now is just so advanced. It's pretty crazy.
A lot easier these days. Yeah, for sure.
My first client, and I've kept this philosophy for a long time, and that I treat everybody like they're buying their castle. My first client bought a $35,000 condo. And after my split with my broker at the time, which was 50-50 at the time, and paying and putting aside money for taxes, I think I walked with $468 was my check. So it's not a big check. But I treated that client like she was buying a castle because it was a castle to her.
Wow.
And if you treat people like that, that client has since sent me $4.2 million in transactions.
Wow, that's fantastic.
So treat them like they're buying their castle.
You learned early the importance of that customer service element, treating everyone with respect, and no
Absolutely.
matter what the price point is. And I think that's something that, agents just starting out, you never know where the business is going to come from. And you've generated a huge amount of business from that customer because you treated her the right way.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I know a lot of agents that would have said, oh, this is a $35,000 deal. Now you got to remember, when I started, the average sales price in Orlando was $88,000. So it
Gotcha.
wasn't that far off, but it was still a lot less than some of the senior agents at the time would have dealt with.
Sure.
So,
Yeah, boy. So changes with technology are one of the things that, we see. It's amazing how things are progressing at such a rapid pace. It seems like there's new technology every few weeks that is coming out in our industry that we have to adapt to. And so you've seen a lot of changes happen over the years. The internet probably being the biggest change in the way real estate is done, the way the business is handled.
Sure.
Looking at the tools that are available right now, what do you feel for agents who are, there's so many shiny objects out there for agents to pick from. What's an indispensable piece of technology that you use that you would make sure agents have a really good working knowledge of, they need to get proficient in? The phone. Yeah,
phone,
definitely. Yeah.
your phone and your CRM, your database management system tool is the only thing I need. Because if you've got the communication potential, which is right here, and then keeping track of touching base with people. Because if you don't want people to feel like they're a number, the people in my database, and that's my business. My business is 96% or higher returning clients, customers, or referrals from them.
Wow.
So they know me, and I'm always in front of them. So the technology, the shiny object, guys, everybody wants that magic pill,
Right.
and there is no magic pill. Magic pill is hard work. It's a lot of hours. When you start in the business, you've got to put in the hours. You've got to put in the hours. But I know when I was in some classes, it was like you were taught to, who do you know is looking to buy, sell, invest in real estate? That's not it. For me, it's not it. My thing is, hey, I saw a picture of Johnny, hitting a home run yesterday. That's amazing. I really miss that Christian's in Little League. How's this team doing? Those phone calls, that touching base, talking about relevant life events to the people that mean a lot to you.
They appreciate the personal touch and the fact that you're interested, you care. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
So your career has spanned decades, and the average length of a real estate career is not that long. We hear statistics thrown out, something like 80% of agents who get licensed get out of the business in the first 2 years. I mean, it's kind of crazy, the turnover. So what do you attribute the longevity of your career to? How have you stayed motivated and successful over the years?
There's good times and bad times. I tell agents all the time when I'm teaching, if I didn't like this business, I'd get out. So you got to find something you enjoy doing. And I enjoy this business. I enjoy helping people reach and achieve their dreams, whether that be moving up in a home, buying their first home, moving down. It's the crazy thing now is, which it's not great, but it's part of life. Is I'm in an age and been in business long enough that I'm getting a lot of business of my friends growing up here, my friends whose parents are passing away.
Yeah.
And taking care of that problem. Being a resource to these people and helping people reach their goals is what makes it all good for me. There's going to be bad times, and how you deal with those bad times is, I think, paramount. Somebody's not, I have no problem if somebody is not, I don't want to say acting, but it's not respecting me or my team. I have no problem cutting ties with them because I don't need that business that much. Making sure that the people I'm surrounding myself with are like-minded and I can help them reach their goals. It's perfect.
Well, because you work so closely with your customers, I completely understand that you want your family of customers to have that mutual respect and be people who you want to work with, because
Right.
their friends and the people they refer to you are probably going to be like them, right? And so
Right.
you want to make sure you have the best core group you can. I understand that completely.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So with your life, you have had some very significant moments that have impacted everything, everything that who you are and everything that you've done. If you don't mind, talk a little bit about your transplant story and what happened to you and how that changed really who you are.
Sure. Absolutely. Absolutely. We only got a half hour, so this I'll abridge version and get a Reader's Digest. In April of 2009, I was heading over to my sister's condo and for Easter weekend, and pulled up in the condo and grabbed a piece of luggage, and that's the last thing I remember. I woke up in a hospital and I had a seizure, and they took me to a hospital over in Flagler County. And after a couple days, they transferred me back here to Advent Health, or at that time it was Florida South. Did a bunch of tests, and I had what's called hemochromatosis, and they said, you've got liver disease. So you've got this, this issue with your liver, and it'll regenerate itself with some medication and this and that. After about 8 months, they said, nope, it's not working. Things aren't working, and the medication we gave you is not causing it to regenerate. So you're gonna have to get a transplant. That I got listed in February of 2010. So I was really out of work from about April, May 2009. I was working sporadically, but not a lot. So I was on the list as of February. And the crazy thing with organ donation, I'm a strong proponent of people getting registered to be an organ donor. There's over 100,000 people waiting for an organ right now.
Wow.
And I was on the list from February, but you really almost have to get to the point of dying to get a transplant. And we all have specific days in our life that matter to you. I think where I was in UCF when the Challenger blew up, the Space Shuttle Challenger blew up, and my mom can look back and say, where was she when John F. Kennedy was assassinated? Where were you when 9/11 happened? The one date that sticks in my head is August 30th, 2010. And I was pretty sick, and I was in the hospital. The doctors came in and said, we're going to discharge you. And I said, I'm feeling worse than I've felt in the last year and a half. And they said, yeah, we figure so. You have 30 days to live. If you don't get a transplant in the next 30 days, you're going to die. So you need to go home and get your house in order.
Oh my God, to get news like that. Holy cow.
But, it's hard news, but it was honest.
Yeah.
And I went home, and by the grace of God, I got a transplant 5 days later. And
wow.
the transplant worked out. And I think that one of the biggest positives of having the transplant and being sick was being able to see all the blessings I had. I was in the hospital over 75 days on and off for that year and a half period. And one thing that everybody that visited me and talked to me says, you always have a positive attitude. You're always upbeat about it. I said, what, what good would come from having a poor me attitude? I'm sick. I can sit here and dwell on being sick in the hospital, or I can think about the good things. And that's not to say I didn't have bad days. But when I had bad days, I would turn on the TV and I would turn on an episode of Extreme Home Makeover Home Edition and watch somebody else's story. And I'm like, they're in a worse position than I am. I feel bad for them. But the one thing that I think it made me do, and we talked about this earlier, is when we're in the business, especially when you're new in the business, you're go, 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 and you're trying to do as much as you can, and you let other things slip through the cracks. I know that when I was starting the business in the first good period of time in the business, I put the business as my priority. And, I'm married and I have 3 great kids. And back then my kids were little. My oldest daughter was 11 turning 12, and my twins were 8 and then 9. I was missing baseball games. I would be late to performances. I was this because I had a client that needed me. I had this event that needed me. And this experience that I had made me change my focus and my paradigm on that. And that was, I immediately, when I got back to work, so I got transplanted on September 5th, 2010. I went back to work. About 6 months later, I went back to work full time. And immediately had my color coded my calendar. And anything to do with my family or my friends was automatically put in my calendar as red. And red in my book means stop. I don't care if you're the biggest client in the world. That's on my calendar. It's red. You don't get in there. Sorry. And I prioritized it because nothing matters more than those important people in your life.
Yeah, so, it caused you to totally refocus your priorities.
Yeah. I remember I had a referral when I first went back to work, and it was a referral from a friend of mine. It was $1 million listing, and I called the gentleman back, and he said, "Okay, I'm available to see you on Thursday at 5." And I said, "Okay, well, I'm sorry, my daughter has her first volleyball game on Thursday at 5." And he said, "Your daughter will have other volleyball games. That's the only time I have available." And I told him, I said, "Well, I wish you the best, but we're not going to work together." Because if that's your attitude with my time, I had to prioritize. And I recommend to anybody that's listening that, especially if you're newer, you got to bust your butt, but you also have to set your parameters.
You have to understand what are the important things in life.
Absolutely.
Truly, what is important. And you hear a lot that nobody at your funeral is going to talk about, boy, he really put in a lot of hours, So yeah. And I think that having an event like you had, I mean, thank goodness, most people don't have to go through what you went through, because that's incredibly traumatic and life-changing. But to have a moment like that brought you clarity and allowed you to refocus your life in terms of what's important, I guess if you have to look on the bright side, that was a positive outcome that came from it. And honestly, your personality, the fact that you are so positive in general, and you approached it in that way rather than having this doom and gloom negative outlook, I'm sure that helped you too. And now 14 years later, you're going strong, you're healthy, and that's amazing.
Yeah, thank you. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's incredible. So talking about work-life balance, because that's a lot, really what this comes down to. It's something so many agents struggle with. I love your idea of color coding the calendar to prioritize what's important. Newer agents really, I think, do have the hardest time with that because they don't want to lose the business. They feel like they have to get those appointments in because they don't want to risk missing out on a paycheck.
Absolutely.
So how would you recommend agents go about those conversations? Because sometimes people want to call you late at night. Your phone might ring at 9:30 at night. You might get a text message, later than that. What's your recommendation for how agents approach that to make sure they're safeguarding their business, but also prioritizing what's important?
Well, it's real simple. When you have that initial conversation, and with the new rules and the buyer's broker's agreement and having your listing appointments, it's really easy now. You're having you should be having a face-to-face with those new clients. So set your standards up front and let them know, here's when I'm available, here's when I'm not. So I will take calls up until this time. And after this time, I'll call you the next day. I don't like to compare us to doctors. Doctors have to go through a lot more schooling than we do. but you don't call your doctor up and say, I want to talk to you at 11 o'clock at night, unless it's an emergency. And we find that a lot of people in the real estate world, buyers and sellers, think everything's an emergency. Most of it is not. So set those standards up, set the priorities. Okay, I'm going to talk to you at this time and this time. And the key is when you say, I'm going to talk to you at this time, make sure you're available and make sure you do respond to those calls. You return those emails, but you set it up front. Also, I'll kind of segue with this to, you're asking for newer agents into setting standards and what they can do. I'm going to kind of jump into luxury if that's okay with you.
Absolutely.
Because a lot of people ask me, I do a lot of stuff on the lakes. There's several chain of lakes here in town. How did you break into the luxury market? And I'll tell you this, my break into the luxury market was luck. And when I started in the business, we had what was called an open floor. Okay, so I said, agents would sit at their desk and wait for the phone to ring. You could do other things. Excuse me. Apologize for the scratchy throat this morning. But you could do other things while you pass the time, but you're really waiting for the phone to ring. And I know this is my second year in the business. So in 1994, I was not scheduled to work floor, but a veteran agent didn't want to work floor on a Saturday afternoon. And she asked me if I'd work it. And being a newer agent, of course I want to work it. So I'm working floor and the phone rings and I'm talking to this lady and I get everything she wants. I said, well, I've got everything you need except for your price point. What do you feel comfortable in spending? And she said, I don't know Orlando at all. I'm moving from Cleveland, somewhere between 600 and $1 million. And I had the phone in my hand, which was actually a really real phone. Can't hold it around here, but a real phone. I started patting it. It sounded like you said 600 to $1 million. Because you remember back then, the average sale price was $88,000.
Yeah, that was a lot of house back then.
Yeah. And they came in town. And luckily, I was smart enough to know I was not prepared at that time to deal with a client of that magnitude in my experience in the business. And I approached Pat Higgins, who is the owner of Higgins and Heath Better Homes and Gardens, and told him the situation. And he goes, let's partner on it. He goes, I'll mentor you with this and we'll partner it. And we did, which meant I gave away 50% of the sale. Real simple. If you're ever thinking about getting in luxury and you're a newer agent and don't know the business, be smart as I was and get somebody to help you, because 50% of that sale was much larger than zero.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah.
Because if I had gone in there thinking I'm gonna just fake it till you make it, I would have lost the transaction. And Pat was a great resource for me. I still think he's one of the smartest people in real estate in the Orlando area. Still in business. We went and looked at property and he, excuse me, the seller's husband, we looked at one property and he goes, what about that house? And points across the street. I said, well, I didn't want to push your price point. I said, that one's listed at $1.2 million. Okay. I knew my data. I researched everything. I said, that one's at $1.2 million. And he goes, oh, you can go to $1.5 million. And I'm like,
Wow.
so they wanted buying that house at $1.2 million. Had I not brought Pat Higgins into the transaction, I never would have never made the sale.
Yeah.
The term "fake it till you make it" is great for the traditional buyer, the first-time buyer, the person who's only done it once or twice. It's not there for the luxury buyer.
Yeah, it doesn't work with someone sophisticated who knows what they're doing. Yeah.
And because I did that, this gentleman came in and took over the CBS affiliate in town and let go of 90% of the people that were working there and said, you did a great job. Let me give you all their business of the people.
Wow.
If I did the wrong thing, I would never got that as well. So
Right.
that was the start of my luxury side.
That's an amazing story. And actually, I've often thought, we get a lot of agents who talk about how there are not stringent enough standards in our industry for licensing and for being able to begin working with customers. Because once you get licensed, you're kind of just thrown to the wolves. You hang your license somewhere and you can start buying and selling real estate. And so there's depending on what brokerage you join, there may not be a lot of training. And I've heard people throw around the idea of making mentorships or an apprenticeship, something like that, a mandatory sort of period after your license to make sure you learn the business and know how to write a contract and work with customers and what the standards of business are here locally. So your story is a great example of that it jump-started your career, especially in that luxury end, by having someone truly knowledgeable who cared about you and wanted to help you.
Absolutely. 100%. Find somebody, I'm not sure if I agree that it should be a mandated issue. I think anybody that comes into the business that doesn't have a mentor or doesn't have a coach or somebody that's working with them is probably going to be in that 80% that falls out of the business in the first 2 years.
Yeah.
I don't like being forced into things. That's kind of why we joined up and we become our own boss.
Right.
But that said, I think if you don't do it, you're foolish. If you don't get a mentor or somebody to help you out, you're foolish.
You need to build a foundation for everything else to grow on. And if
Yeah,
you don't
absolutely.
learn it the right way, it's really tough.
Absolutely.
So with all the things that have changed in real estate over the years, you have seen things come and go. You've seen markets come and go. You've seen the pendulum swing both ways. What's your impression of the market today? And where do you feel that we're headed within the next 6 months?
Well, I think we're going to find out more in the next couple of months. Like obviously we're 3 months away from an election. So there's some volatility and some uncertainty in what's going to happen in the next 3 months. That said, my suggestion to agents is get off of social media. There's a couple groups, and I won't label that are on social media. Get off of the groups so that everybody has their opinions, because 90% of the opinions that are shared on there are incorrect. So do your job. Do your job. The market is going to be where the market is. Even when the market was terrible, even when the market was in the Great Recession, which I decided to have a liver transplant during the Great Recession. So I don't recommend doing that. That's not what I'm saying to do. But even during the Great Recession, there were still properties that were selling. Properties right now are selling. And we put one on the market last Friday and it's already gone. If agents are pricing properly and giving wise counsel to our sellers and to our buyers, we're gonna do fine. That yes, there's some new rules that come into play. Follow the rules, do what you're supposed to do. I look back and how are agents going to do well over the next 6 months to the next forever? I look back to Dave Chubb and some words that Dave said a while ago in a class. And how do you survive the real estate business? And it's 3 words. So Kyle, what are those 3 words? Do you remember?
Gosh, no. So I don't know the 3 words. So you're going to have to illuminate me as well.
Talk to people.
There you go. There you go. 3 words to live by.
If you talk to enough people and get enough people to trust you that you're knowledgeable and you can help them in the right way, you're going to do fine in this business.
That's great. That is tremendous advice. So for everyone out there who is a buyer or seller and would love to chat with an expert like you, or for agents who want to pick your brain because of all the experience that you have, what's the best way people can reach out and contact you?
2 ways. One, you can reach out to me. My phone number is 407-920-9749, or my email is david@Fraser, Fraser, sallesorlando.com. I'm there. I'm on Instagram, Orlando RE Agent, and Facebook. I don't do a lot of TikTok, so I just don't know that. So Facebook, Instagram are my 2 social media that I'm working with the most, but happy to help, happy to talk to anybody.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time and for joining us today, for sharing your inspiring story, for all of the knowledge you've bestowed. I greatly appreciate you being part of the show.
Oh, my pleasure, Kyle. Anything to help.
All right. Very good. And thank you, everyone, for listening. Have a wonderful day. As we conclude another eye-opening episode of Real Estate on the Up, I want to express my appreciation for joining us. Thank you for being a valuable part of the Real Estate on the Up community. Your time and engagement mean the world, so make sure you subscribe and leave a review. Your real estate goals are my priority, and my team and I are here to provide the personalized attention and service that have earned us high recognition. If you have questions, need guidance, or are ready to make a move, don't hesitate to reach out. I'm just a message away. I'm Kyle Madorin, one of Rate My Agent's top 100 in the United States, signing off. Until next time, take care and make those real estate dreams a reality.